Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. It is 9:05 a.m. My name is Ty Menzer, Vice Chair of the Board. Chair Commissioner Mejia is participating through Zoom. Commissioner Gary Edwards to my left, County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and to my right, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We're scheduled till 12:30, I see. We'll have a break about 10:25-ish, and we'll have two executive sessions at the tail end of this morning session. And with that, we'll take up item number 1, which is homeless strategies update. From Public Health and Social Services.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino here. I have for you preliminary data for the point in time count for 2023. We've put together, Ariel Benson from our office has put together the data, as well as a lovely graphic that will be coming your way to give you some graphs, just a visual representation of this year's count. So this year, we counted a total of 792 individuals that are either unsheltered, sheltered, or living in transitional housing. Of that 792, 425 were identified as being unsheltered, 274 as sheltered, 93 as living in transitional housing. The average age, or the majority of the people who were surveyed, were between the ages of 36 and 45. When asked on the survey where was their last address, and specifically the language was, where was your last permanent address, city and state, 63% of those who answered stated Thurston County, 9.3 indicated Pierce, Mason, or Lewis. 17.6% indicated somewhere else in Washington was their last permanent address, and then about 9.7% identified as being from out of state. There were a total of 68 vehicles and 14 RVs that were identified as being liveaboards. These numbers are not included in the official count because those individuals were not surveyed. These were just vehicle counts. So 68 vehicles and 14 RVs, there's an assumption of at least one person living aboard those vehicles. And then 51 other individuals who were surveyed, but they were doubled up, meaning they were staying with friends or family or couch surfing. And so those 51 people, through the McKinney-Vento definition of homeless, would be counted as homeless, but through HUD definition, they are not. So although they are officially unsheltered and experiencing homelessness in Thurston County, they're not part of the official HUD count. And there were 6 individuals that are identified not having a permanent address that were on that night in January living or residing in any of the jails or hospitals. So those are our preliminary data. We anticipate that we will have those numbers verified and duplicated by Department of Commerce staff, and we should have those official numbers by May, we're hoping. So then we can create the final report for our point in time count for 2023. And I'm happy to take any questions.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions.
I know you'll have more data for us, Keely, but since you did break down a few demographic groups, is there any numbers you have about like under 18 or families with children, that kind of thing?
Yes, one second. So of those surveyed, of the unsheltered individuals, there were, let's see, about 55, the numbers, I'm looking at the graph right now, so it doesn't have specific numbers, it's on a bar graph. So about 55 individuals between the ages of 0 and 17, and then 18 to 24 was hovering in the 20, around 20 individuals. The predominant percentage of people surveyed were single adults. So I'm looking at this chart. about a third were at least one child and one adult, so a family with a minor.
Say that again, a third of,
A third of those surveyed would be families with children, at least one adult and one child.
all right, thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Keely, I'm wondering, I know the schools each year have you fill out a survey, and I'm wondering if this information that we have correlates with the information that the school districts get every year.
So that number is an annual, like rolling accounting of students that are identified as being homeless, and it comes out annually. So usually in our reports, we will call we'll put the OSPI or Office of Superintendents of Public Instruction, right? Those numbers we get annually. We do roll them into our report. Those numbers are much higher than what we get on the PIT. The PIT, of course, requires that survey and direct consent to participate in the survey. And so there are a number of families that are not counted because families who are experiencing homelessness often are living in vehicles or they're not out where in the encampments. And so there's always an undercount with the PIT, and particularly, I think, with families with children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keely. Item 2 this morning is review of the draft agenda for this afternoon's meeting at 2 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the agenda. We'll have a presentation regarding Child Abuse Prevention Month proclamation.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. This is an opportunity for the Board of County Commissioners to acknowledge the March as the Child Abuse Prevention Month in Thurston County. I believe we're going to be receiving some guests this afternoon. Jamie, who has confirmed attendance?
Prosecuting Attorney's Office is supposed to attend as well as guests from PHSS. I've included the slideshow that they provided, should be like 4 or 5.
I cannot hear Jamie.
So
Get her on
if I can repeat, members of the Prosecuting Attorney's Office as well as the Public Health and Social Services will be in attendance this afternoon, Madam Chair. And there is a PowerPoint presentation included in your packet this morning that will be highlighting as part of the proclamation.
Questions on that?
Thank you.
No questions.
Okay. Then next item will be the consent agenda. We have, or sorry, County Manager's update.
I don't have any specific follow-up this afternoon.
So I skip opportunity for public to address the board, County Manager's update. And then we'll have our consent items 3A through D. Item 3A is an auditor item regarding the elections information security grant.
Yeah, this is, we briefly reviewed with the board this item last week. And this is an item to authorize the auditor's office to receive an additional $80,000 of a grant from the Office of the Secretary of State. And this is specifically to do physical security improvements on the elections ballot processing in voter centers. This is an additional money of the current grant, which the total will amount to $240,000. And again, this is, I applaud the efforts of the auditor's office to continue to find opportunities to bring some grants. And I believe there is some timelines associated with when we need to spend this. And we will be working with the auditor's office to make sure that is the case and delivering the intent of the grant.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Mejia? I don't see her up there.
I think she's.
Okay. I think we- Any questions about the auditor's grant?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you. My questions are in terms of, so this is the security grant. Is it gonna be for the Mottman building? I'm sorry, my feed kind of cut off as I was coming in.
Yeah, that
Is
is
this gonna eat into the estimated price of the building, or is this gonna be for something separate? Not the price of the building, but the price of the project that has been allocated to the
You know,
commissioners.
it could be, but I think it's a matter of timing. As you know, we don't have the full funding for the overall project, and we're gonna touch base a little bit later on as some of the strategies that we have been working with the auditor's office. So this, if the timing would have been right, you're right, we could have used this grant to supplement some of the cost of the project, but we don't have the project, the rest of the money. So this will have to do some small improvements on the current conditions.
Could I have a follow-up on that?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So that's not gonna offset this, 1.8 million that we've,
So give me just a minute and I'll be able to tell you what this. I'm sorry, it'll take a minute. Should we come back to this?
With that, we move on to item B, which is Public Health and Social Services, updated treatment, sales tax advisory committee operating policies and procedures. And we did get a red line sheet with the updates. And
Yeah,
so-
we distributed that last week, per your request, just to bring this matter a little bit of a high level. The TST Advisory Committee voted on February 2023 to propose changes and recommending approval by the Board of County Commissioners. It does three main elements: adds the responsibility and election process to the committee co-chairs, add the duties of all members to act in accordance with the Thurston County resolutions, proclamations, and other guidance by the board, and also makes a specific reference for the TST members to follow the Thurston County Resident Advisory Committee's board handbook that you approved. And this is, I believe, is a good effort by the TST members, considering there was a little bit of some conversations late last year. Finally, we've come to a point in giving a little more authority to the chair and creating an environment where the discussions can be free-flowing on a civil environment. And Carrie Henning is here to add additional perspective on this.
Carrie?
Good morning. Nothing to add. That was a good summary. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
no questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer? Okay. Moving on to item C, this is the Lake Lawrence Regatta application for April 29th through 30th, 2023.
Thank you. You also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners. Commissioner was not here, but my apologies. And this is a yearly event where the Sheriff's Office receives an application from the Pacific Northwest Boats Racing Association for inboard hydroplane, inboard flat bottom and outboard events that is going to be occurring on Lake Lawrence between April 29th and 30th. This application has met the requirements of the Sheriff's Office, and the Sheriff's Office recommended for you to approve this application so they can provide the support for this event.
Thank you.
And Lieutenant Brady is here.
Lieutenant Brady, anything you'd like to add?
Good morning, Commissioners. Just the only thing I'd add is, as I mentioned last week, the only change in this is just the name of the organization. As they changed to the Pacific Northwest Boat Racing Association. But this is a very long-standing tradition that we've had this group here in Thurston County, and one of the races being on Lawrence Lake. So I've attended many times, and it's a great organization to work with.
Thank you. Any questions?
Maybe I'd just follow up on the lieutenant's comments. This has been going on since the 1950s, and I'm not aware of any problem that they've ever had. Really.
Commissioner Menzer? Okay, no questions for me, thank you. Moving on to item D, from the Treasurer's Office, is authorize the sale of tax title property via private negotiation, OAR Investments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item was presented last week. This is for you to authorize the sale of this property, which is a 0.25 acres. This property has been in tax title since December 1984, and through the process has deemed to be unbuildable to a great extent. No utilities are coming to the site, and the grade of the property itself is very steep. So as a result of that, there's really has not been anybody who can probably purchase this land. That's what has stayed in the tax title since December 1984. And this is an opportunity to have a direct sale to the nearby property owner to increase the sales tax revenues. Just to give an example, if you agree to go up with this process, the assessed value of this property is $5,500. And so the impact to the general fund will be $4.67.
Thank you.
Every dollar adds up.
Any questions? Commissioner Edwards?
Only, is this an adjoining property that you're, that the folks are interested in?
No, this is a new purchase, but I want to add, thank you for your time this morning, by the way. This property did fail perk tests in the 1990s as well, so it's going to be very, very difficult to try and develop.
Any access to water?
So one of the attractions, this is from my background in the assessor's office, one of the attractions to buying these properties that you really can't do much with in Evergreen Shores is access to their beautiful lakefront park there on Black Lake. Because as a member of the homeowners association, you have access to that park.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on to department items. 4A for the auditor's office is approval of the voucher list for the week of March 6th.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is under department item for you to consider approving the voucher list for the week of March 6, 2023 for a combined amount of $1,287,080.98. This item is included in your department items. As part of the department item, it's not in the consent agenda. There's still some small amount payments related to the tenant improvements of the atrium. And I believe I look at this voucher list and it's just about less than $50 associated with continued payments of some of the remnants of the tenant improvements. However, you do find on the ongoing basis the lease of the building as well as the lease of the parking lots that continues to be in the ongoing process.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
My only question would be the lease of the park. I thought that we were doing this in conjunction with the building, but there's a separate lease.
It's a separate payment, but it's not an, we have not been asking additional budget authority to do this, no. But, Robin.
Okay, thank you.
But two different transactions, that's what.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menzer? Okay, no questions for me. Moving on to central services, item 5A, contract award for fairgrounds infrastructure improvements, project number 25560.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is related to the, what I call the signature project in the long term. And as you may recall, the Board of County Commissioners set aside some money to contribute to this signature project. So this is the first phase one of this particular project. Will be demolishing some of the current existing structures and bring in the appropriate utilities. And that will be preparing the site for the future building. The future building is yet to be seen where the money will come from and how the design will be. But again, this is the first stage. On March 13, 2023, we received 10 bids. And the low bidder has been considered for you to approve to Mike McClung Construction Incorporated, I believe it is, for $142,788. And again, this is just the phase one of the overall long-term project that we have a vision in the fairgrounds.
Thank you.
And Jason is here to answer any questions.
Jason, anything you'd like to add?
No, I believe County Manager Chavez covered it well.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Will this interfere with the time frame of the county fair?
No, it will not. We'll have it completed in time.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mentor? I asked my questions in regards to kind of the next steps of this project last week, so I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Moving on to item 5B, request for qualifications for Progressive Design Build Services for the Thurston County infrastructure upgrades.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, when I presented this item, I stated to the fact that perhaps this item may or may not be part of your agenda today. So I'm glad this item is on your agenda. And the reason that I'm glad this item is on your agenda is we had an interview with the state's project review committee. And this is a committee established by statute where have members of construction industry look on a case-by-case basis the value and the ability of any particular organizations to deliver a different project delivery method. Traditionally, we have, and I think you're well aware of the method that we go with the project is design, bid, build. We designed the project, we bid it, as you just previously saw one, and then we secure the contractor to construct it. The progressive design build allow us to issue a contract to a single contractor, and they can perform their work on certain areas or phases of the project while they continue to design the other parts of the project. So how this is really key to the courthouse campus. For instance, the work can begin on building number 1 while they're designing and permitting building number 2, and so on and so forth. And also will allow us to encapsulate the cost. As you know, the construction inflation is a big risk, and we only have a maximum, as the board authorized, the bond for $50 million. So it is important for us to put hands around on the cost and do as much as we can within that allocated budget. Because under the traditional design bid build method, it will probably be a year, not more, until we can issue the contract to a contractor to do the whole work. And every 6 months on a $1 million project, we see an increase of just about
$40 million project increase of $1 million.
$40 million is $1 million every 6 months. That's the construction increase that we have. So on Thursday, last Thursday, county staff, I give kudos to the team. They put together a very successful application. We had an interview, and the result of that interview, the committee voted unanimously to give the county the green light to process the progressive design build. This is a very aggressive schedule, and we're hoping to begin really construction on building 1 in the 3rd quarter of this year. And one of the first steps that we need to take is for you to consider issuing the request for qualifications to secure the services of a contractor. And that is the item before you this afternoon to allow us to do that. The next step, as soon as we have reviewed the proposals and the qualifications, the staff will bring a proposal for you to issue a contract on the selected contractor, and we begin the process. And this timeline was very well received by the committee last week. And again, I applaud the staff for the hard work on bringing this application to fruition.
Thomas, anything you'd
Tom?
like to add?
Just to clarify on the process, it's a 2-part process. We do the request for qualifications. Once we receive those and score them, then we'll do a RFP, request for proposal, to discuss fees and things. So we'll have however many submit, we'll shortlist it to 3 to 5 companies, then bring them in for interviews and discuss further the project.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
That additional cost you're talking about every 6 months, $1 million on 40. Is that a direct reflection of inflationary costs and the cost of doing business? So that could fluctuate a little bit?
Yes.
Just roughly, that's about it?
Correct.
And then, as this project moves along, will the board be receiving some kind of a chronological plan of activities that are going to be taking place in case we get questioned by, I don't know, staff or the public, you know?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is this happening or that happening?
You
Absolutely.
will absolutely be receiving regular updates from us on this project.
And we'll begin with the master schedule, and we'll give you absolutely all the activities as soon as we negotiate the contract with the contractor.
We'll also be establishing a website on this because it is a huge project that the public will want.
So the public can follow along if they want.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Munson?
No.
Okay, no questions, for me. We'll see kind of the responses that come in through the RFP and go through that process. Moving on to item 6A from the Commissioner's Office, and this is the 2023 lodging tax award recommendations.
Yeah, you review these items, commissioners, in a couple of occasions. It is for you to consider awarding the contract, the grants for the lodging tax grant. We received 15 applications. And the proposal before you is for you to consider issuing grants to 14 of those applicants. Some of those applications included a higher amount on those they are recommended for you to fund. And I'll be more than happy to walk you through each one of them, but I believe we give you a list. But again, I'll be more than happy to walk each one of you if you like additional details, but that is the intent at this point. The overall allocation for this grant is $100,000 for 2023. And Jenica Machado is here to answer any questions.
Yes, Jenica Machado, Economic Development Manager. Don't have anything else to add on to that, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Well, maybe just a quick, have we made any adjustments over the last couple weeks on who we're paying or who we're not paying? Or who is receiving these monies? I guess I'd just comment that having been the chair on that particular committee that made those determinations, in looking at the legislative intent of the legislation that allows collecting and dispersing that money, it seems like the intent is with the committee to make those recommendations. And so it was kind of a democratic process. I will say, I don't know as I agreed each time with each proposal and the dollar amount, but it was the democratic process that took place. And so we bantered back and forth quite a bit about who would get what and why and what was the benefit. And I think there was one issue that paying FTE positions or portions of positions maybe was not an eligible expenditure, and I think that had some effect. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I had heard that in the discussion, and in general, didn't seem like there was interest from the group in supporting that cost.
Okay, so, I mean, so it was a democratic process that put it together, I guess. I'll just let it go at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Munson.
So we discussed this last week and you weren't here, and so and so part of what you're saying is kind of answering that question, because my question was sort of like, is the goal, well, what I wanted to know was there a statutory mandate to either pick the things that bring in the most people or to try to support? Another idea, I think Jennifer said, was there was also an effort to try to help with smaller events that didn't have any other funding source, maybe in South County or whatnot, and is one of those what you were trying to do, or the other, or you were trying to balance them? And what I got from Jenica, I think, was basically that both of those were valid and neither one is a directive, and basically the committee was trying to balance those different goals, and
I think the whole thing was about balance.
that's a fair assessment then.
So, yes, thank you.
That's what you think is good, and I'm good with what you guys came up with.
Yeah, and I'm not going to try to move anything, like, but I do have a recommendation for our LTAC commission next year. You know, this year was a rare occurrence because we had a little bit more funding than what we usually do. But I would want to focus, right? I saw the LTAC funding for all the, you know, for Olympia, for Lacey, for Tumwater, and I saw how they funded each one's, and the priority was things that were located within, you know, their own jurisdiction, although they did fund items that were not specifically in their jurisdictions as well. And so for us, I think that should also be a priority too, in funding these events where an LTAC is not available in, well, maybe in their jurisdiction or something like that, you know, it's, or these smaller events where they don't have any other. So I think it was great work. There were great applications, I think, that were submitted. But that's, you know, that's just my recommendation, but I don't know if how Commissioner Edwards or Commissioner Menser feels about that. And
So Commissioner, are you suggesting that the board choose to fund an item that the LTAC did not recommend?
no,
All
I'm not
right.
gonna change anything.
All right,
Yeah,
thank
that's why
you.
I was like, I'm not gonna
looking
change
for
anything.
clarity.
Yeah, but like in the next years that, maybe items where, you know, those are kind of, if they qualify, right, like are given a little bit more priority than,
What you suggested perhaps is narrowly the focus of the applications that may be considered for funding for next year.
well, no, I'm not recommending that. I don't want to narrow the focus. I want to make sure that what we're giving priority to is events where, you know, they don't have an LTAC necessarily to rely on, that, you know, the county's the only one. Some of these events I saw, they did have multiple applications in all the different LTACs because that's what they, you know, that's the impact that they have. But for some of these smaller events, like Thurston County is the only one where they go to, and I know are relying on funding, so that's kind of where.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna make a note about some discussion we had on a process change for next year. We had discussed that for the application period next year, we would potentially have the remainder of the year open. So when after we make these decisions, and so all of 2023, people could apply for the 2024 session instead of having a limited window after we know the budget in December. And so I'll be exploring what that process could look like.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards.
And then I guess to follow up on the chair's comments, that was actually one of my concerns as well, that we try to do better in representing the unincorporated area, mainly because we have such limited resources to compare us with those other jurisdictions that have, like hotels and such, that they bring in a lot more money, so they can provide more to their community events. So that, I'm with you on that. And I think we could put together some, maybe a policy comment or something in there that is a concern of the board.
And this hasn't really been an issue in the past. It's just because we had that extra money, I think that we received more applications than what we usually do.
Yeah,
and-
there's a significant number of
Yeah,
applications.
and we did not spend much over the COVID period
Yeah.
I
compared.
think 2 years that it was stopped, you're right. Jenica, if you can just highlight the requirements that each recipient will have to meet in terms of reporting. I think that is important because when we issue the grants to a particular event, an organization, there is any specific deliverables they need to meet in terms of reporting, so.
For their final report, they will need to provide overall attendance numbers, attendance for 50+ miles away, attendance out of state, out of country, attendance paid for overnight lodging, attendance who did not pay for overnight lodging, and paid lodging rates.
Those are not easy issues to address. So they're gonna not be exact, but,
And those are requirements from the state.
right.
And I think we have made clear those requirements to all the grantees, correct?
All grantees, before signing the contract, I will be going over the reporting requirements to ensure that they feel comfortable.
It seemed like to me, I seem to remember you saying that there was discussion about, because we asked last week, do you discuss the fact of whether they're getting money from one of the other LTACs that we call it, the cities. And you were suggesting that maybe there was some feeling that that shouldn't even be considered, which, I mean, seems a little crazy to me. I mean, you know, we do so many of these things coordinated regionally anyway. You could, to me, it would make more sense to just do it all together regionally, but if you're not gonna do that, then it seems like an intermediate step is at least to have an awareness for each committee to kind of know what the other committees are doing, and it sounds like that doesn't happen, and everybody just kind of operates in a silo, and somebody might get all the money one year and, you know, not all the money, but you know what I'm saying, like money from each one, maximum what they asked for. That just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but I've never sat on the LTAC committee, so I don't know the dynamics of it, but.
Okay. So are we good to go on the recommendations? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 7A, community planning and economic development. So the public hearing for development code docket item 8-6 shoreline master program update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a long time coming in a way. You have reviewed this item on a couple of occasions. Just to give you a perspective, the Planning Commission reviewed this item during 81 work sessions between 2017 and 2022 August. A public hearing was held by the Planning Commission on October 20, 2021 to accept public testimony. In August 3, 2022, the Planning Commission voted 5-3. The majority recommended approval of the proposed code amendments. The 3 dissenting Planning Commission members presented to you a minority report, which you had reviewed. Follow-up conversations with the board, you provided direction to go ahead with a public hearing that will include a single document. The single document includes the recommendations of the Planning Commission, in addition to the required documents by the elements by the Department of Ecology, including also is the desired elements by the Department of Ecology. And that document is what will be going to as part of the public hearing. Also, the minority report will be available to the public to review, and that will be the basis also of the public hearing. The request is for you to consider setting that public hearing for May 16, 2023 at 5 in the afternoon in this room. And Andrew DePolvis, Senior Planner, is here to answer any questions.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, that was a great summary.
Thank you. Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I might just comment in talking with the Planning Commission over the years on this topic, that that 5-3 split of majority and minority report, the split seemed to be along the line of the long-term members of the planning commission that had been present for all of those many interactions with the public, basically ended up being the majority report. The minority report was basically written by those individuals that had not been privy to all of those many meetings and were only in attendance for a few meetings. So I just point that out as a point of interest, that part of the group was there the whole time and part of the group was not for a lot of it. So a very complicated topic. Does that sound about right, Andrew, in your estimation?
I do believe the minority report was authored by the newer planning commissioners. As they were all onboarded onto the planning commission, we shared a lot of the historic documents
Sure.
and background on the project. So they were made aware of those things in retrospect, but many were not on the commission as long as some others.
Anyway, I just mentioned that.
2 of the 5 majority were appointed since I got on the board. There's only 3 planning commissioners that predate my joining the board in 2019.
And that may have had something to do with attendance or what. I just mention it, that's all.
Commissioner Mensah, questions?
Nope.
No questions for me. I don't have any meetings in regards to this, and I did meet with Andrew and Chris, so I thank you for that recommendation, Commissioner Mensah, to kind of sit with the casino, and so we just walked through a lot of the issues and a lot of things were broken down, and so I think it's gonna be a long public hearing, but I think it will be a good one, and just with the ecology recommendation, I think that answered for me like a lot of the questions that were up in the air, and just hearing that I thought was pretty good. Okay, so thank you. So May 16th, don't make any dinner plans.
Bring some sandwiches for a long night, for sure.
Hello, okay, moving on to the next item, item 7B, Thurston County Permitting Fee Study, competitive bidding waiver.
And again, this is another long-standing item. You reviewed this item on a couple of occasions, commissioners. And staff went on request for proposals back in September 2022, which that particular request for proposals closed on November 17, 2022, which included one extension. And the reason is they included that extension is because we didn't receive zero proposals to conduct the fee study as provided by, directed by the board. So we needed to be a little more inventive. So early in this year, we reached out to the vendor who provided the current fee study to see if they have the capacity and they have the ability to do so. And they responded that they are in the position to provide those services to the county. And that is really the intent of this particular item, for you to waive the competitive bidding requirements and engage on a contract with FCS Group for a total amount up to $196,295. And that is with an additional 10% deviation. This is I believe, a good exercise to go through. The timing is correct. And perhaps you'll hear from Jeremy, the intent is to have this study done before the board engages into any conversations related to the upcoming biennial budget, because all that needs to be in tandem. This particular effort is going to be funded by 3 departments: the Community Plan, Economic Development, Public Health and Social Services, as well as Public Works. Jeremy?
Sure. Thank you, County Manager Chavez. That was a great summary. The only thing I would add to this at this point in time, a couple things to note on the contract. We do include some funding in there for lean process analysis to look at our permitting processes to try and see if we can find any efficiencies with those. And this also includes funding for Help FCS Group, helping us with the public outreach to our stakeholders in this matter. So doing outreach to any of the affected groups out there, the master builders and the residents of Thurston County. And it also includes support during the budgetary process. So they'll be here to answer questions for the board during that process. And again, with this fee study, we're really looking at the rate that we need to charge in order to do our business. We haven't done the most comprehensive one since a new comprehensive fee study since 2007, 2009, in that date range. We did do a survey last year. We found out we're about in the middle of the road with that survey. And some things have really changed since 07, 09. We have different rates for central services. We have different facility rates. We have different internet technology rates. And we also know that the cost of replacing our permitting database is much more expensive than I think they probably anticipated back in 07, 09. So we have many things that have to go into this rate study. We do need to do it. This is an effort for us to be transparent with the residents of Thurston County as to why we're charging the rates we're charging in our department to cover our costs on that. With the actual recruitment process to get FCS Group on board, we did work very diligently in trying to recruit firms to make application for our RFP, include calling them when we issue the RFP initially, calling them through the process and seeing if they're going to do it, and then checking with them, of course, after the process closed to find out why they didn't do it. And I did contact at least two, probably three firms on doing that. FCX Group came forward and said they could do it. We did need to do a shift in our timelines, but that shift in timeline still allows us to complete it with the budget process for this year. So we really worked very diligently to follow the county's purchasing process in that, and working with the internal county auditor on the waiver process as well.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Will we be utilizing or recognizing the time savings of dealing with the whole permit process that we could possibly benefit from utilizing technology? And like one of the things we're trying to do is utilize video or photographic evidence of, say, construction issues like a footing or something like that. We're trying to get that more to be the norm.
Inspections?
The inspections. And will we be recognizing that hopefully those inspections time spans will be less once we get that fully implemented?
Well, let's separate something here today. What we're looking at with this are land use permitting fees. What you're talking about are the building permit fees, and that'll be a separate item we'll have to bring to the board. So the footing inspections don't really play as much into this. But again, anytime we're looking at our permitting processes, we are trying to look for efficiencies, and I know that Brett's group is diligently working on that. As part of this process, we'll look at it, and that's why we have the lean process analysis built into this contract with this contractor. But also as part of bringing our new permitting database online, they're looking at their processes, seeing how they can be more efficient. The PRT process was a big part of that, on trying to reduce the amount of time that the applicants are paying us to process their permits and get them out the door for them. And I see Josh is actually on the horn. I don't know if he has anything to add to that.
Thanks. I think just to answer the question directly, as Jeremy stated, we will be looking at all different efficiencies, Commissioner Edwards, and yes, how we can improve our process, whether it's the inspections or others, part of that discussion.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
So I didn't realize this was land use permitting fees, not building permit fees. It doesn't say that in this, anywhere in this item, and frankly, I don't ever get complaints from anyone about land use permitting fees. It's always building permit fees, and I thought that's what we were putting our focus on to try to calibrate for cost recovery and all that.
We have the two components to funding our department, and I don't know if Josh has something to add to that. We have the building permit fees we collect, which we're going to work on those next, and then we have the land use permitting fees. With the land use permitting fees, we have to do our own rate study for those fees, and that's what this is, the rate study to set those fees. With the building permit fees, the board does set those, but it's a little more prescriptive, and there's some state law around that, and I don't know all the specifics on it, but this is definitely on land use, the land use side.
Thank you, Jeremy. And we have had the conversation with building permit fees. I think that the public gets confused with those two things, Commissioner Mitzer. The land use portion is that bring me another rock, the hourly rates, the process that we've been looking at that's really started to create the complications. So this is that big fix to try and address those issues that have been raised in the past by Commissioner Edwards and others in terms of how much money we're charging versus how much time we're spending. And so the goal is to reduce the amount of time spent and potentially align the rates appropriately. Is that helpful?
I mean, I guess.
We've had the conversation on building costs before, and as Jeremy says, they're tied directly to the legislation of the state. So the land use is really the big piece. Just don't, they're connected, but they'll all be part of the consideration.
Every constituent I meet with, it's complaining about bringing me another rock. It's about another rock for their building permit, a wetland study, a this study, a that study. This one's not good enough. This one expired. You know, it's all that.
And
Frankly,
again,
I frankly never had anyone complain to me about the land use piece of it, because those are big projects, usually big developers with deep pockets who understand the process. It's the smaller folks that don't understand the process, don't have deep pockets. They're the ones that are really, it really, you know, bothers them. And I thought that, you know, for us to plunk down $200,000, that's what I thought we were, that's why I was comfortable spending this money, is because I thought that's the problem we were trying to solve. If not solve, at least show transparency to the public. Here's why you're paying. Here's why you're paying what you're paying.
It is, the wetland study is part of a land use permit. So those, it's a matter of semantics and terminology, I think.
So, it will be helpful, I mean, you know the system, the process very well. An applicant comes and wants to build a house.
So when an applicant comes into the Building Development Center, they don't generally know exactly what permits they're going to need. And so we have two types of review that take place in CPED, aside from the public health and the development review side. We have the land use review and the building review. The building review just has to do with the structure of the building and making sure it's compliant with our building codes themselves. The land use review is where we're looking at zoning, where we're looking at wetlands, we're looking at other critical areas to make sure it conforms with that. And this fee study addresses that land use side of the house. When the public comes into the BDC, they just see us as one county and one fee that they're paying. And again, those fees where we're saying, bring me another rock like you just brought up, that really is coming down to the land use permitting side. The building permit side is pretty prescriptive. They have a code, they get a building designer, they follow that code, and it goes pretty fast. But it's that land use side where we're saying, bring me another rock. Oh, no, you need this special use permit. No, you need to have this critical area study. No, there's this other fee. And that's what we're trying to solve.
Pocket gophers.
Yeah, the pocket gopher is another one of those. And
I got it, you guys.
Yeah.
It's a component of what I consider to be a building permit.
They only see us as one.
A docket item where we're dealing with a land use change. I think of land use permit as a land use change, not an evaluation of, so I got you.
Yep, okay.
Well, the county manager mentioned that. I mean, one of the things hopefully that has been eliminated is the whole gopher process. I think we've got something else in place other than those ongoing delays, but that whole business about get another rock or another color or something seems to be that ongoing bugaboo. And in my estimation, my whole goal is that we do our darndest to try to help people through the process, not just say to them, well, this isn't complete, or, well, we told you that a month ago. You know, I want to kind of change things to where we are all about helping citizens accomplish their goal. So however you can make that fit, I'm there with Commissioner Mensah. That is the height of my frustrations on, and nothing does happen very quickly, I will say, so.
I had, I was the one who asked this item be moved to this week because I had questions and I sat down with both Jeremy and Josh to walk through this process, so that's why I'm not asking a lot of questions today. It's because they did a great job in walking me through this process beforehand.
Everybody's good on this one?
So are we good to move forward on this
I guess
fee
so.
study?
I don't like it. I think it's a lot of money. I'm questioning whether we need that much expended on this deal, but the way the county manager mentioned, it sounds like it's not gonna be too hard on the general fund anyway. It's gonna be,
I'm not saying that. I think it will give you enough information for you to make an informed decision.
oh, okay, well,
So I
I'm
don't
glad
want
to
to, I
see
don't want to
that-
claim that.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to see that the costs are being shared with.
Yeah, I don't want to claim that.
And we do, CPED does appreciate this opportunity to get the real information and data for the commissioners as you guys are, as the board is making their decisions on budget process. So thank you to the support of the Assistant County Manager, Robert Campbell, and the County Manager, and making sure that our timing is aligned appropriately.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving forward, District Court, item 8A, professional service contract amendment, substance.
Yeah, thank you. Frankie Peters is excused this morning, so we'll cover this item for District Court. You reviewed this item last week. As you may recall, the board authorized $500,000 to provide from the American Rescue Plan to fund a Scrum devices, and that's related to, instrument of ankle bracelets, I believe, I don't know, to those individuals who may be enrolled in the justice system in order for them to go out to jail. Within the whole process, they are also required to do actual testing, and they conduct just about 300 tests a month related to the DUIs and everything else related to their functions. So this particular proposal is that for you to consider amending the contract with Friendship Diversion Services, which provides the Scrum devices, to add the testing. And there is additional money from TSTs. We're not requesting any additional funding. At this point, it's just the intent is to streamline the process to do the Scrum devices as well as the monthly testing they have to do under a single vendor. And that really brings a set of efficiencies within the whole process. Frankie's gonna be here this afternoon, but if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
The end result of this is gonna be helping alleviate jail overcrowding in the long run, is that right?
That is the objective when the board authorized this funding, absolutely.
Okay.
Because in the past, if I made those devices were costing just about $10 a day, and some individuals may not be able to afford that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mensah? No questions. And then Public Health and Social Services, item 9A, amendment of 2022 through 2023, interlocal agreement with Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization for Treatment Sales Tax Funds.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a follow-up to the budget decisions that were made last December. And this is to allocate the 2023 treatment sales allocation to the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administration Services. We currently have a contract between January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2023. And this particular item is to amend the second year, that will be 2023, to add the $3,710,286 to their contract. And again, this is in alignment with the board's direction as when you approve the 2023 midterm budget amendment.
Carrie, anything you would like to add?
No, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Is there any possibilities that we could use foundational public health dollars to supplement some of this drawdown on the treatment sales tax fund?
I don't think foundational public health includes this type of activities.
Should it? It's, that might be the question. What's that?
We could certainly take a look.
I mean, if anything we can do to help us save this fund for other good things, I think it's beneficial. And I just wonder if this foundational public health dollars aren't, I'm not saying readily available, but if it doesn't fit, maybe more if we would kind of look into that to see.
Maybe we can look for the, for next year,
Yeah,
since the
yeah.
foundational
Yeah,
public
that's
health
fine.
allocations, the board has approved, we approved the TST. That may be something the Kerry can work with David to see what those opportunities will be for the upcoming biennium. Will that work?
Sure. I just bring that up to discussion with my seatmates, so, thank you.
I think that's a good suggestion. So Commissioner Menzer.
No.
Are you, Commissioner Edwards' suggestion to say foundation public health is an option
For next year.
for next year?
Or at least just look at it. I'm not saying we can even do it.
No.
Just to look at the options, yeah.
Usually we use treatment sales tax for things that the state will not pay for. But we can certainly look at the foundational public health money and see if it's different in some way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 9B, treatment sales tax community grant contract extensions.
Yeah, and it's also, we reviewed this item with the board last week. And this is, in a way, an administrative action. We currently have many grants with community providers. And those contracts end on June 30, 2023. The intent of this action is to bring those contracts to December 2023, so we align on all the contracts that we have on the calendar year. So the result of that is we need to add these contracts for an additional 6 months this year. And that is the suggestion for you today. So we have contracts with Family Support Center of South Sound through December 31st. And the new contract will be $233,810. And also extend the YMCA of Olympia through December 31st, 2023. So the new contract will be $115,450. The overall extension of the 6 months, the cumulative effect is $250,000. And we have enough budget authority within the treatment sales tax to accomplish this request. Carrie?
Thank you. Yes, so this is aligning so that all of our community grants would end at the end of the year rather than having some end in June and some end in December. And that will then set us up to come back to you and ask permission to release a RFP for community grants for 2024. So release an RFP in the fall pending your adoption of a final budget, but to have everything be on the same cycle.
We review the treatment sales tax funding coming in. Are we going to have enough money in these future years as the revenue slips to make this happen?
We have so much money in that fund. We can't, it's the fund we can't seem to spend.
Okay, I mean, you don't see a
And one of the
slow
key
down.
elements is there's a lot of reversion every year.
A lot of reversion.
And most of the,
Including this year.
and a lot of reversion comes from the internal allocations really, not necessarily by the community grants.
So even with and while revenue, sales tax revenue may not be growing as fast as in some prior years, we are still seeing growth.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vincent? No questions? Okay. That will conclude our agenda for today.
Can we go back to the item, the others
Yes.
grants?
Back to the grant.
Just to make sure we answer
on
your
page
questions.
one.
Item 3A, which is OSOS Elections Information Security Grant, 80,000 per year, 2023 through 2025, for a total of 240,000.
So the information that I have from the auditor's office is that this funding would be used for items in addition to the $5 million renovation project for the ballot processing center. And the auditor intends to use this money for badge readers, for additional doors, updating doors, alarm systems and hinges, lighting on the outside perimeter, barriers on the outside perimeter, and cameras on the property.
Here's Mary here to fill us in.
I heard that you were going to be talking about the grant, so I would be happy to answer any questions you have about it.
Thank you for coming.
I ran, so.
Thank you for coming, Auditor Hall. So we had a couple of questions. Robin, Rick just went through the items that you were planning to cover with the grant. Are there, I'll go through.
Can you repeat? We've got so many grants in here. Can you?
Right.
So I can hear what you.
This is the one from the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And the application specifically says that we would use it for badge readers, for additional doors for the ballot processing center, updating doors, alarm system and hinges, lighting on the outside perimeter, barriers on the outside perimeter, and cameras.
Right. So these are projects that we can do currently without having to move any walls or do any of the minor retrofit, upgrade, expansion that we're talking about. So this is one grant of one every 3 years. So there are no matching funds required. One of the things when we went to a Department of Homeland Security conference early in February that we realized, I don't know if I want to say this on TV, is our hinges are on the outside of the doors, right? So we're just doing a lot of things that are going to make the facility as it stands today more secure. So if you've seen those barriers when you drive up, we're buying more of those so we can go the full length of the building and upgrading our cameras, lighting on the outside and things of that nature, so.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Well, I guess being Mary's here, have you heard any more about any of our other requests, if you will, looking for money, the state maybe?
I have heard from Senator Hunt, I think it was last week, that the capital money is not going to materialize. Also, we were informed by Congresswoman Strickland to not even really submit our grant to the federal government just because of what they're looking at funding, the makeup of Congress, and that this likely would not be a candidate, so it was deemed too political, which boggles my mind because there's nothing political about elections at all. It's a process. It's a process of democracy, so.
And we do have follow-up conversations scheduled with the board. We have been working with Auditor Hall as to what we can do in the short term, midterm, perhaps long term. So we'll be, we have an item on the next agenda, and that is predicated on a conversation that Robin is going to be managing this Tuesday morning as to how we can take one first step on the overall request from the others. And also on the planning session, April 28th, we'll have a much larger conversation with the board on the long term. So we're have already scheduled conversations with the board to start taking the steps to accomplish the larger project. Yeah, she has been invited.
Yeah, anytime you want to discuss, I mean, I'm right upstairs on Tuesdays, so, or I can Zoom in, so we try to catch when you're talking about the auditor's office, but I would appreciate being part of the conversations. And we do have 2 applications in with the Senate, US Senate, so we're still waiting to hear on those, but
Questions, Commissioner Mentor? Thanks so much, Auditor.
Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us to our agenda for meeting of March 28th, 2023. Let's go ahead and cover our agenda for April 4th. It's not too long. And then we'll go ahead and take a break before we continue on. So our meeting for April 4th, county manager will not be here that week, so it will be Robin, Assistant County Manager Campbell, who will be leading us through this meeting or helping us. So the Pledge of Allegiance.
Don't be here.
Yeah, Commissioner, yeah, it will be.
Okay. So it'll just be me and you, Commissioner Edwards.
We'll make it work.
So if there's any items that requires 3 votes, we can certainly manage that. Yeah.
So call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the Tuesday, April 4th, 2023 agenda. We do have a presentation, which is National Public Health Week.
Yeah, for your consideration is for you to proclaim the week of April 3rd through April 9th as the National Public Health Week in Thurston County, and public health staff will be present to have a conversation with the board next Tuesday.
Thank you. Jamie, do we have any guests coming for this proclamation?
Outside of PHSS, I don't have any, but I'm I'm open to suggestions if you'd like me to reach out and contact anyone.
I'm wondering if maybe some of our public, Board of Health members would be opening to coming in as well for this.
I can definitely reach
Good
out.
idea, and have David look into whom else.
Okay, so we have a proclamation. If commissioners will revise it and submit any edits they have to Jamie. After that, there will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
If there's any follow-ups, depending on your public testimony this afternoon, I will ask Robin to follow up. If not, I can probably wait until I come back.
Item 4A is voter registration design contract.
So follow up to the conversation you just had with County Auditor Mary Hall. Currently what we have in Building 5 of the courthouse campus is the elections administration. So on the overall plan for upgrade in the courthouse campus, we need to make sure that we move at the request of County Auditor Hall only once this particular outfit. And obviously the next location will be within the Monument Complex. And so we have worked with County Auditor Hall to see how we can facilitate that move only once. We have touch base. There is a possibility to move that to one of the buildings of the 3 of the Monument Complex. Without getting into the overall improvement, there is going to be a small improvements within the existing space. They will accommodate moving that particular activities of the auditor's office to the Monument Complex. The result of this is really we need to get some investment on architectural firm that provides the design for those small improvements that we need to do. So all this is predicated on where the money will come from. And we do have money to accommodate, I believe, these architectural firms. But the question is how we're going to be managing the the actual construction of this, of the improvements in this building. Because it's two things, it's ballot processing center and it's the elections administration. So a while back, when we were looking at the ballot processing center, and the cost estimate for that project was about $5 million. Robin provided you with a little bit of a perspective related to where will $1.8 million will come. And then she will elaborate in more detail this coming Tuesday. And that was the result of us asking for a grant anywhere that we can of $3 million to finalize or complete the ballot processing center project, which is only in one of the buildings at the Monument Center. The approach to this is perhaps for the board to consider using some of the $1.8 million to do those small improvements at the elections building now at the Monument, to see how we can move forward. I think there's a lot of benefits doing this process. One of which is we only move the elections side only once, as opposed to having to move twice as a result of the overall moving pieces of the courthouse campus improvements. So it's a lot of moving pieces. I know we have already scheduled next Tuesday morning where Idaho Hall is gonna come as well to give enough time to give you more details related to this very short step related to the overall plan. And again, this is an item that will be for your consideration next Tuesday afternoon. And if you don't feel that the plan that is presented to you next Tuesday morning is not adequate, you don't need to follow up with this item. This is just one item for your consideration next Tuesday.
So we, before you, if I may, we've put this on the agenda because if the board should approve this project, time is of the essence. And we wanted to be able to get it going as quickly as possible. But as Romero said, if you're not ready to make a decision, we can certainly delay it.
I'll start with Commissioner Menzer since he's not gonna be here.
Okay.
Let's move it on. Commissioner Menzer.
Okay, so if I understand all that, you're asking us to go forward with 193,000 to
Actually,
this.
it's 221,000, that's a new contract, that's a new number.
222?
221,000, 201.
With the tax.
221,000 to design some improvements. And when we talk about Montman, do we have a way of talking about the buildings like 1, 2, 3 or ABC? Because it's very confusing for me to know what we're talking about.
That got processing and voter registration. Yeah. It would probably be the best way. Voter services is.
Yesterday, the voter registration is the one across the parking lot from the current ballot processing center.
Correct.
Okay, so.
That is the plan at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about design to that building with this money, but that doesn't make any sense unless we were willing to use some of the money that you had sort of cobbled together for the potential construction to make the improvements that were designed.
On the ballot processing center, on the ballot and processing center.
I thought we were talking about the voter registration.
So you would take this pot of money and move it over to this.
Where's my whiteboard? I need my whiteboard here.
Right, we need the whiteboard.
So the whiteboard is coming, but
I'm saying you're taking the money
Right.
that we had put together for
Cobbled together
potential
for
ballot
ballot
processing
processing.
center,
You're taking it away from that and applying it
but we
to
don't know
the
what
voter
that,
registration.
we don't have any clue what that, what the design's gonna show in terms of what's needed for the voter registration.
That's correct. We have a
I think we will.
pre-design,
We will
but
probably approach this similar to how we will approach the courthouse. That's a maximum amount of money. So the architectural firm will have to meet with intent of that maximum budget.
Can you just remind me of those sources that you were, because you went through them with us a
Yes.
couple times.
so, well, I can look up the exact amounts, but they are the remainder of the lost revenue from ARPA, and that's approximately 800,000.
Robin, could I interrupt just for a moment, ma'am? Because I'm getting farther in the hole over here. you made a comment about 100 million, I thought, when you were first talking. Did you really mean 1 million? Is that what you meant?
Did I say 100 million?
Well, it surprised me so much.
No, if I said that, no, that was not. So
You're talking about,
Police facility.
you're talking about 1 million
it's
in this fund? Is that
1.8
about?
million, 1.8 million. Commissioner Messer asked the sources in which Robin suggested.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
So, yeah,
So we needed approximately 5 million for the ballot processing center. We're way off because, as you just heard, we're not getting anywhere with grant funding. So what the proposal is, that you'll hear more about next Tuesday, is to take the approximately 1.7 million that I cobbled together out of other sources, which I will list in a moment, and redirect it from the ballot processing center to the voter registration building. And those sources are the balance of lost revenue from ARPA, 821,000. Interest off the ARPA money that's been sitting in the bank, 466,000. The Mottman rent that we've collected, that's remaining, we used the Mottman rent money so far to pay for the design of the ballot processing center, and there's
And the
100.
Mottman rent money, that's the money
So
we're not
those are
paying out.
tenants now, until they move out, we're collecting
Oh,
rent.
okay, good.
And we're proposing, we've already used a chunk of that money for design of the ballot processing center. There's about 120,000 left, that we could put toward one of these buildings. And then the fourth item is, the reserve money from building reserves for building one on the Capitol campus. That's 500,000. And as you're aware, there's a risk to using that money for this purpose, but it is available and at your discretion.
so more to come on this particular item. After you have the opportunity to hear more detail, the plan will bring some graphics, we'll bring some layouts, talking about the different buildings at the moment, so you can have a better understanding. And again, if the plan that you will be hearing next Tuesday morning doesn't really get your approval, this item will be removed.
Right. This also does mean that when we are looking for money to fund the ballot processing center, that we would then need to look for just about the whole 5 million. Because we will have used what I squirreled away.
Is Commissioner Mensah satisfied with that?
I mean, I'm okay at this point, if you guys are okay, if you guys can be satisfied next week.
Well, I don't know that I am either, that's,
I mean, I understand the what's being proposed, so. And it's kind of.
you made mention that time frame was of the essence.
Yes.
Yes, timing is of the essence, and Mary, would you describe why?
Sure, we have a presidential primary, less than a year from now. And prep for that is, 90 days. So the presidential election year for us is right in front of us. And voter registration is kind of in this, well, kind of in temporary housing, if you will, in Building 5, which isn't large enough to really accommodate a presidential election year. So they were gonna move us back to Building 1, which is large enough, but then it's like, where's Waldo, right? Where's voter registration? So it makes sense, since eventually the long game is to move voter registration to Mottman. It just makes sense to do it now, even though we're not gonna get what we want or need for ballot processing. It's gonna give us what we need for voter services and voter registration, so we can adequately serve the public.
I guess my concern is, what reality does the presidential primary have on the process? I mean, the timing wise, I mean,
Well, it
did
would
we
have to
have
be
any effect I'm not saying we don't need to do it, if the law says we need to do it, but does it have any effect on the outcome at all? Has it had a history of having an outcome one way or the other? I mean, does it do anything? It seems like it's kind of a circus, but
We have to have a large enough facility to be able to handle that circus. I mean, I'm not sure what you mean about outcome. We need to be able to serve our customers.
Sure.
In presidential election years, the volume is very different than any other type of
I guess
election.
where I'm coming from though, if the feds don't care and the state doesn't care, why? How come they don't care? I mean, they're not gonna give us anything, sounds like, to help solve this problem. Is that gonna make it, is that a good decision to use $221,000 to do additional analysis of what we need if we don't have anything to address the need with?
So a lot of counties use grant funding, ARPA funds. Cowlitz County expanded their facility. I believe Mason County did also. King County already has a fantastic facility because of what happened in 2000. So the county funded a very, very beautiful space for them. You know, the reality is we don't have adequate space. We're in temporary housing. So, you know, I've done everything I can to reach out to the federal government for funding. We've gotten funding, but it's for security. And all the grant money that is coming down the pike is for security, not for infrastructure. And that's really where our challenge is. I have a pot of money that I can use to make sure that this will be the most secure voter services center that we can possibly build, because I have the funding for that. There's just no federal or state money for infrastructure, because they feel that that's the county's responsibility, is to provide adequate space and accommodations for us to conduct the business of elections.
Maybe to answer the second part of your question, so this in addressing the need by this proposal, if we don't have any money to address the need itself. And that's the proposal that you will be considering next Tuesday morning with the $1.8 million that Robin just stated. And that is, at least from my point of view, that's the maximum that we can couple up the money to address the need. And it's not going to be a big project, that is gonna be a small tenant improvements, but at least we'll address the basic need, the others need, in order to be prepared for.
We're not gonna be anywhere near the 5 million that we
No.
projected that we would need.
But the 5
It's a
million
different
is for
project.
different buildings, different projects, different buildings.
So this is dealing with voter registration, voter services. So we're switching gears essentially because we don't have the funding.
So we'll bring the layout next Tuesday morning just to make sure I know we're talking different buildings in the complex. That may probably paint a clearer picture. But again, this item is depending on your conversation Tuesday morning.
And the timing issue is if we don't get going on it, we're not gonna get it done.
Well,
And then
because
what does that mean? What are we left with if we don't? I mean,
so then, I think we need to find a way as to how the county auditors will operate on Building 5 during the presidential election, which you heard from County Auditor Hall, that the space is restricted, so we need to.
and that's for 2024.
2024.
Or 25. 24, okay. Are we gonna have that fairground building up by then?
2024.
That we could use it for that?
Speaking of money, we don't have any even.
Don't have any money to do that
To build
either?
that way, it's all.
So we spent $1 million moving into South Puget Sound Community College. Keep that in mind too, when we had to temporarily move. But we had all of this federal money. So even if we had to move, it's expensive to move elections because we have to move all the security with it. So we're in a pickle.
I'd like to hear more about what effect this presidential primary has on reality.
Well, that's not my issue.
No, I know, but, I mean, and if
I
it
don't deal
doesn't,
in politics.
if
I
it
deal
doesn't
in
have any
elections.
effect on reality, then Why should we steal from other areas and cobble up more funds to make it happen? I'm just wondering about that, that's all.
That's the
It's not
conversation.
that we're making
Democracy
the
happens.
presidential primary happen, it's that we're providing the space for voters to register and vote.
Well, I know that.
Not just for the presidential primary. We've got, because of the volume of voters that come not only for that thing, there's so many other things on the ballot.
Right. And in a presidential year, we have 5 elections instead of 4, so.
How
and
are we
they're
gonna
earlier.
handle the registration for this year's election? We've got 2 new districts and the breakdown. I mean, I know you've sent out cards, you are in this district or that district, that's part of it. But I'm trying to think of the difference. You're thinking that there's gonna be so many more people wanna get involved in the presidential side of this thing?
Usually
You
is.
can look at statistics, it
You've
just goes
got
like
some
this.
great graphs on
Turnout's like double,
turnout, and
Sure.
maybe you could bring those next week.
Double the number of
Okay,
voters
I'll
in
do that.
presidential elections. Yeah.
Right? It's like, it'll
It's
be
like
like.
election on
it'll be like
steroids.
30% something versus
Right.
60.
Oh, sure.
high-
Yeah.
High 30s to high 60s, right?
Right.
Basically.
She's got excellent data and graphs that
Right. We'll
we
bring
can
some
provide.
statistics for you.
For next Tuesday morning
Sure,
conversation.
of course.
So my question is, Commissioner Mensah, are you okay with us having this conversation with
Yep.
the president?
Yep. You guys figure it out. I'm good with what you decide. I mean, cause I understand the proposal and I understand the need, so we can,
We could move forward with something this way. Because right now for the ballot processing center, we're at a standstill.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. Community planning and economic development, item 5A, set a public hearing for open space tax program update, farm and agricultural conservation lands eligibility criteria, CPA 16.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that has been presented to you. It was brief, March 15, 2023. It was following up to the Agriculture Advisory Committee reviewing this item on the session of July 19, 2021, and August 9, 2021. And the Agriculture Advisory Committee also review again on September 16, 2021, and November 18, 2021, and develop some recommendations that came before you. As a result of the March 15 briefing to the board, you requested staff to bring an AIS to set the public hearing, and this is the item for your consideration to set it, the public hearing for May 2nd, 2023 at 3:30 in the afternoon. And Ashley is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ashley, anything you would like to add?
No, that was a great overview. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards? Commissioner Mensah? Okay. Moving on to emergency services, item 6A, execute sole source contract with the National Fire Protection Association for assessing structure ignition potential from wildfire training.
Thank you. As the item that you stated, Madam Chair, this is very prescriptive as to what type of training needs to be done. And this funding comes from the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant, which comes through the Washington State Military Department of Emergency Management Division. The Board of County Commissioners approved this grant back in June 14, 2022, and is currently included on the 2023 budget. So the National Protection Association will provide 6 two-day assessing structure ignition potential for wildfire training in the Thurston County region. And this particular effort is expected to end in April 30, 2024. And again, it's 2 items for you to go with a sole source with the National Fire Protection Association for training. And the total cost is $60,970, which is coming from the from a FEMA grant that is already included on the current budget. Ben is here to answer any questions.
And anything you would like to add?
No, thank you. That was a wonderful overview.
Thanks. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
And it meets all the legal requirements for sole source.
That's correct, sir.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
No questions from me, Beth, thank you. Okay, information technology. Item 7A, annual voice infrastructure maintenance renewal for 2023.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item related to the telecommunications product that we use. We use the Mattel telecommunications voice system and connectivity. And this is the vendor of this particular product is Strike Tech Communications. This particular item is to continue with a maintenance contract with TriTech to continue to provide the services in our telecommunications. This contract is for $49,377. If you add the Washington sales tax, it's $54,067 for a 1-year term. This particular contract also have an option to go up to 5 years. But the yearly cost is $54,067.82. This is already included on the information technology budget 2023, which the board approved last December. And again, this is just the continuation of the of our business related to IT. Sherry Ill, the interim director, is here to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I wish I did, but no.
Commissioner Menzer?
I don't know what this means, voice infrastructure.
It's our phone system.
Telephone system.
Is that already in our?
Yeah, it is included.
Cost of doing business. Okay, great. Thank you. Public health and social services, item 8A, contract with Catholic Community Services Southwest, emergency shelter services for veterans.
This is a continuation with the partnership that we have with Catholic Community Services, where we secure shelter beds for indigent veterans. In this particular contract goes from through the year of 2023, where we pay $45 per night for shelter beds. So that will be, we'll secure with this contract 3 beds per night for veterans. And out of the 60 shelter beds the Catholic Community Service has at the Drexel House. This contract with Catholic Community Services has been standing for 10 years now, and they continue to provide services. This funding is coming from the Veterans Fund for an amount of $49,275. And again, it's through the calendar year 2023. Denise is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Louise, anything you'd like to add?
The only thing that I would add is that this is reimbursable, so it's only based on once a veteran has actually stayed and been approved to stay there. So it's not something that happens unless they've been approved to stay at the shelter. We reimburse them the funds.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
How much did we spend of that similar dollar amount last year?
I can get that for you right now.
Well, she looked into.
I don't know, I don't know, you need an exact number. I'm just wondering, did we utilize most of that fund to deal with this issue, I guess?
I know, I know in quarter 4, we had 2 individuals that stayed. In quarter 3, we had 4, but I can get the exact amount for you.
I don't think I need the exact amount.
And the $45 per night has not increased since 2019, so it's the same.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to Public Works, item 9A, resolution and call for sealed bids for furnishing a supply of various asphalt materials.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a yearly request from Public Works for you to consider issuing a call for sealed bids to secure the a vendor to provide the supply of various materials that is utilized on the regular maintenance that is coming out this summer. That includes asphalt, road maintenance materials, and so on and so forth. This is a strategic move every year, just to make sure that we lock the prices, so we don't face the volatility of oil increases and everything else that usually happens during any year. So this approach has been extremely successful in the past. We secure a contractor, we secure the prices of all the construction materials, and that way we have access to those materials when we need it during the busy times of road maintenance. The result of this will bring a contract for you to consider approving based on the bidding process. Mike Lohman is here to answer any questions.
Mike, anything you'd like to add?
I don't have anything to add, but able to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, Commissioner?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner? Okay, so that will conclude our agenda for April 4th. I only heard of item 4A that there will be discussion with, and that's the one we will decide in the morning if that moves forward with or not. Is there any other item that commissioners do not feel like we can move forward next week?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's 10:46. Let's take a break and then I'll be back. is March 15th.
That's the tough commissioner move.
No, sorry.
And we are back from break. It is 11:05 a.m. And we left off with proclamations and awards and advisory reports and commissions. And I'll pass it to Jamie Caldwell, clerk of the board.
Good morning. For proclamations outside of what has already been reviewed, I don't have any further updates. For boards and commissions, the standing applications for the Agricultural Advisory Committee, Boundary Review Board, Housing Authority, and Black Lake Special District have been included for your review. I haven't received any new applications for the Housing Authority, and they are still recommending appointment of Sherry Chilcutt. The Agricultural Advisory Committee won't be meeting to review the student application until April 20th. Outside, and I'm still waiting for response from Black Lake Special District. I figure give them probably at least another week or so before I follow up with them about their outreach efforts. But outside of any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer?
Salary Commission, I was understanding that there's a couple of people that are being
I have an
expiring.
item on your agenda that I will provide you a little more overview.
Okay, so that's that. And then, the student appointment looked great for Ag Committee, the Boundary Review Board looked good. I've had a chance to interview the Housing Authority, so I'm ready whenever teammates are, and so that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So with Boundary Review Board, that was approved by,
They were recommending appointment of that,
Recommending.
of Todd Hughes.
okay, and then so for April 20th is when the Ag Committee is gonna meet for Nathan, so we'll wait for that one. It does look great. So are commissioners ready to move with the Boundary Review Board appointment? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So we'll move forward on that one. And then you said you were gonna follow up with the Black Lake Special District.
Yeah, probably next week. I figure at that point it's about 3 weeks since I first followed up with them with, your guys' reply of just reasonable outreach effort.
if they don't have an applicant, I'm fine to move forward with
Yeah.
Mr. Louis.
Okay.
And then the Housing Authority Committee, I also had a chance to interview the appointment that they're recommending. So with that, are we ready to move forward on an appointment for the Housing Authority Commission, or do we want to wait on that for another date?
I'm okay.
It's only one seat, so out of the three, which one would the board like to move forward with? Is there any recommendation for one of the commissions to begin the conversation?
Is that the one, is Jim Cooper on there and?
He's not, he's one of the guys.
Jim Cooper, Paul Knox, and Sherry
Knox.
Chilcutt.
And who else?
Sherry Chilcutt.
And Sherry's the one the committee is recommending?
Yes.
No, they're not.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are recommending her. Okay, well, I'm initially going with the committee, but I'm not locked into that. I've got nothing, either one of them, Jim or Paul, either one. The board has a preference, I'm not worried about it one way or the other. I kind of like to go with committee recommendations, but I'm not locked in.
I know Paul, I know Jim, I met with Sherry, I thought she was a good applicant. I'm gonna lean toward Jim, cause last fall he was the chair of the Housing Authority, the Regional Housing Council. He stepped away from that role, so I just felt like out of the three, he's got the best understanding of how the housing authority can plug into the various needs. He's got the real good overview of what the community needs are in housing and homeless response and all of that, so. But, you know, like I say, I think we'll be fine with any of the three, but I'd be voting for June.
Where's the chair?
For me, I enjoyed the conversation. It was a really short conversation with Ms. Shulka, and she provided kind of her experience, and I was thinking I felt like she would be better suited for one of the advisory commissions in the Regional Housing Council, and I was, just because of, you know, just that experience that she's bringing in, and I think where the housing authority is right now, where they've done such great projects, and, you know, but some of them were paused due to COVID and construction and everything, and having them kind of restart again. I was leaning as well with Jim Cooper, just because of his loss in the Regional Housing Council and the experience that he brings with all the subsectors of housing. That's kind of where I was leaning towards Commissioner Edwards.
I guess following up on both my seatmates, I do think, and Jim's representing Olympia, right? And Olympia was one of the first ones that did that home fund. And so, you know, whether I agree or not, I think he's very qualified on bringing the most knowledge to the board. So, I mean, I'm fine with Jim.
So here consensus that Mr. Jim Cooper for appointment, so we'll bring this item next week.
Okay. And then we'll wait on Nathan for the April 20th meeting, and then Jamie will be following up with the Black Lake, and we're moving forward with the Boundary Review Board, Todd Hughes. Okay. PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I have no updates for you this morning.
Any questions for Megan?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I guess my only question, Megan, is have we received any feedback on the website and how that's going along?
We haven't received a ton of feedback. What we have received is pretty positive. There are some things that we are working through, which is typical with a brand new website as big as ours. So there are stuff we're working through, but generally we're getting pretty good feedback.
Great, thank you. Legislative update? Oh,
I have one question
yes.
on that issue. Is Art still with us on that? Did he put that together?
So RTM is going to be with us until the end of April.
Okay, so he is able to fix the things that have been pointed out?
He is working with the IT group to go through and help fix things.
Last day is the end of
Yes,
April.
his last day is April 30th.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, legislative update. You have.
I am now going to be walking you through each of the bills. So we have another cutoff tomorrow. So next week we'll see another revised report. We'll see what bills are moving forward. The only one that I want to highlight continue to be is on page 3. That is House Bill 1670, and the Senate Bill Companion is 5618. Halfway through the page, those are continues to be alive because it's considered to be necessary to implement the budget. It seems to be a lot of energy behind that. That is related to raising the 1% limit on the property taxes up to 3% related to inflation. We'll see how that goes. There seems to be a lot of energy behind these two bills, but we'll see what goes.
Yeah, a lot of sponsors.
Right.
That was.
So that's all I have.
Questions?
No questions.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to commissioner items. We do have a couple of them. The first one is TSCO, Patrol Vehicles Purchase, and the sheriff is here. Sheriff? And if, have quite a crew if they will wanna come up here and.
Good morning and welcome.
Morning.
So, having conversations with the sheriff, related to the, replacement of some of the patrol vehicles. And the replacement of the patrol vehicles, correct me if I'm wrong, is going with a larger engine. And that is the intent. I believe the sheriff will provide you with enough justification as to what is essential, for the operations of the patrol unit, division of the sheriff's office. And upgrading to the higher engine as we go through the normal replacement, there is not enough money on the ER&R funding for each of those vehicles. Because the way we fund those, the ER&R is by vehicle, by the type of vehicle, and the replacement is based on that type of vehicle. Since that is a little bit of a higher price because of the bigger engine, then the conversation comes to is required additional budget. I believe the initial feedback that I'd received was perhaps 300,000. This 361,000 this year. But if you imagine this ER&R, the revolving fund, we need to keep up with that type of higher asset when we go through the replacement. So it's not a one-time investment that you may consider, is making sure that we have the ongoing issues. So today really is for you to hear from the sheriff and his staff about the need, what they're planning to implement. I'm not expecting you to make a decision today because this is a budget-related matter, and obviously this sub-cycle, you cannot make this decision today. But certainly, I'm sure the sheriff's office will provide a budget amendment this year. It's coming up, and the deliberations of that particular budget impact will be coming up when you review the budget amendment requests. So no decisions today. This is an opportunity for the sheriff to give his perspective in outlining the need of this particular asset.
Commissioner Sanders. Good morning, Commissioner Mia, Commissioner Menser, Commissioner Edwards. Thank you for having us today. I brought a lot of institutional knowledge with me as a result of, there are things that occurred prior to my election that impacted all of this. So I have Chief Mencius, I have Captain Watkins, and I have Captain Johnson with me today. All have been instrumental in prior decisions that have been made and kind of where we are today. Historically, to give some context, the engine that we're talking about is the EcoBoost engine, so that's what I'm referring to. The Sheriff's Office historically, since I believe 2017, has ordered vehicles with EcoBoost engines, and they served us extremely well. Very low maintenance issues. There are other departments like Washington State Patrol that did not have the EcoBoost. They opted for the cheaper engines, and almost all of their cars fell apart and spent most of the time in the shops. They have since upgraded to the EcoBoost engines. The city of Lacey has upgraded to the EcoBoost engines. Some of the other departments went with the hybrid engine. They've had extreme failures with their cars as well. So by far, the most bulletproof engine that we've had over the years has been this EcoBoost engine, and that was built into our ER&R funding up until 2021. In 2021, a decision was made for future cost savings to cut the engine option from our vehicles, which it's about $4,500 a car, and then also to stop painting the doors black, or stop painting the doors white on our patrol vehicles. Which sent us into an all-black SUV that had black lettering that said sheriff across the side of it. When I got elected, I immediately wanted to get rid of that because the perception to the public is that we're hiding from you, that we're kind of running a ghosted graphic on our vehicles. So what we did to kind of offset the cost of that paint on the cars was we are now wrapping the doors. So instead of spending I think it was $2,500-ish to paint the doors white, and then put the graphics on, and then at the end of that car cycle, we'd have to spend another $2,500 to paint the doors back to black and then sell the vehicle. Now we're wrapping the doors, which I believe is costing about $1,200 somewhere in there. And at the end of the cycle of the car, we're just ripping the vinyl off. So we've cut a lot of savings there, but we're also back to a fully marked, very visible unit, which was important for me as the sheriff. So that is part of this cost that is incorporated in this, is going back to a marked unit. Another part of this cost is a 27% increase in base model cost from the factory. My understanding with this is that Ford, we've been going through patrol car shortages. I believe just in 2022-ish, somewhere in there, we made an order for patrol vehicles and got none. And Ford addressed that issue by retooling an additional factory and increasing the cost of all their cars, but they're guaranteeing the vehicles now. So that's where the increase in cost came from, I believe, from the factory. So a lot of this $361,000 isn't coming from the upgraded EcoBoost engines. That's about 80,000 of it approximately. And that's if all of them were, which we're not asking for all of those engines to be upgraded. There are only certain vehicles that need to be upgraded, and that's in our patrol fleet. We have vehicles that are set to be replaced, such as our chief vehicle that Captain Watkins drives, which actually we're not probably going to replace this year. It's low mileage, so there'll be some just this year cost savings in that. We also have detective vehicles. The performance issues, which I'll get into this, obviously aren't impacted by detective vehicles. So those vehicles are not going to get the upgraded engines and things like that. It's only going to be for that patrol division that needs the higher output engine. The last part of the kind of the budget thing that we're talking about was increasing a small amount of the budget to allow deputies to have some sort of say in how their vehicles are set up. So obviously patrol cars come with a lot of different equipment in there, and ER&R is a good way for us to get equipment into our vehicles and also have it replaced when that time is coming up. So one of the things that I've been trying to do as the sheriff is to find creative ways to incentivize and recruit people that other agencies aren't doing. And one of those things is allowing deputies to choose what kind of patrol vehicle they get. So now the Chevy Tahoe, which we went away from in 2018, 2019, I believe, is now the same cost as a Ford. So our proposal is going to be to allow deputies to choose between which vehicle they want. So that was one of the things that we proposed, and that was very well received by our deputies. And as a result, we've had almost no deputies leave. After last year, we had 15 deputies leave in the calendar year. We've had none this year, and these are some of the impending changes they've heard about that we're trying to make that I think is really getting people excited and wanting to come work here. And also, just a side note, we're down to 2 vacancies on patrol. So we are really starting to chip away at those vacancies and getting people hired, and getting people to stay is kind of that's the back end issue. We can always get people hired, but getting them to stay. Going into the performance issues, and I'll provide any documentation you guys want, but some of these numbers are pretty extreme. When you talk about the reason that we want to go back to these EcoBoost engines. One of the reasons I was told this decision was made is that pursuits were kind of coming to an end with legislative changes. We anticipate some of those coming back. And we've also amended our policies, for instance, to chase DUIs. And we've chased a lot of them recently to get those cars off the roadway. And so when you start talking about the differences between the 2 engines, the base model engine has 285 horsepower. The EcoBoost engine has 400. So you're looking at almost a 100% increase in horsepower. And so when we talk to our emergency vehicle driving instructors, they've all given a unanimous, this is a needed piece of equipment. We have long code runs in the county. We're not a city agency. We don't have backup, right where we need it. So it's not uncommon for deputies to be backing each other up 15, 20 minutes away. And when you look at the difference in 0 to 100 and 0 to 60 times, which I can give them to you here, we would be shaving off minutes. Not seconds, but close to minutes in our response times. So those are the kind of things that we look at when we talk about officer safety and equipping our deputies with good equipment that they're proud of and that they're excited to have, and also trying to offer things that other agencies aren't necessarily offering, like having more say in how your patrol car is set up, because different cops like to do different things. They're interested in different aspects of the patrol work. So allowing those deputies to find their niche at our department, I think is huge to the retention stuff. Instead of just giving them a bland vehicle and saying, this is what you get, enjoy it, actually giving them some say and some ownership in what they do. So I'd like to answer any questions. Again, I have all the documentation here for different specs for the engines. We have documentation about which vehicles are set to be replaced and have different mileages on them. So again, this year, I understand a little bit better the ER&R thing that Ramiro has explained to us. This is an ongoing expense. However, this year we would be able to offset some of those costs because we've identified about 5 vehicles that would not need to be replaced this year. So we wouldn't be spending that money. Granted, eventually the captain's vehicle will need to be replaced. The chief's vehicle will need to be replaced. But at least for this first year, we would be able to soften the blow a little bit for any expenses.
So it would just defer the cost for those vehicles?
It would, yes.
Making a subsequent year higher?
Yes. But in my opinion, we should also probably look at stretching some of those vehicles out, right? If we have a car that has 66,000 miles on it that the chief commutes to and from work, then there's not really a necessary, an imminent need to replace that vehicle, that's operating just fine, so. But it does just push things down the road.
I saw Bruce's camera pop up. I'm wondering if he wants to add anything.
I'm available to answer any questions. The sheriff is correct. A large portion of this is due to manufacturer cost increases.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to questions. Commissioner Edwards?
The number of miles that you're replacing vehicles at, as a general rule, I don't know if that's yours or Bruce's, bailiwick.
Well, maybe
General-
Bruce, but we have the numbers here for all the vehicles that are set for replacement.
Are you referring to, is there a standard that we look at?
Yeah, and then I suppose you must look at the maintenance cost that led up to that and all that kind of thing. Just kind of as a overview maybe for the board.
Sheriff patrol vehicles are generally on a 5 to 6 year life cycle. The higher mileage vehicles,
5 to 6 years life cycle.
the higher mileage vehicles tend to get about 25,000 miles a year. 150 is a pretty high number. We try to get them out before then, but it's not uncommon for vehicles to hit 150 in patrol. 150,000 miles in 6 years.
They do look at each vehicle every year, examine the uses. I know Bruce tracks maintenance costs on each vehicle and they look at that. It's all taken into consideration before we replace the cars.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer?
So just trying to break down the total financial ask, you were saying 27% higher base mile price from Ford. Does that mean, is that part of this 361? I mean, we'd be paying that anyway?
Yeah, it's a large part of the 361.
So if we said no to the upgraded engines, it's still gonna cost us quite a bit more.
250,000.
Okay, so that, you identified that as like 80,000 of it.
Yeah, about 80,000 of it comes down to, actually, it's probably a little bit less. 80,000 was if all vehicles, and not all of them need it,
So a quarter less than that, so more like 60 or 65, okay.
And then a small portion of the budget there was like a 1,500 to 2,000 per car to try and incorporate like some equipment options into the vehicles. So not much there. And again, really the only thing I'm really focused on with this ask is the patrol division. The detective cars are cheaper. There's just less equipment in there. There's no cage in the back. There's no light bar on the car. Those are some of the really expensive features that go on the cars. So we're just talking about the patrol division.
Okay, I got you.
How many cars are in patrol division? So how many cars are we talking about?
73 total vehicles that are assigned to the rank of deputy up through the chief of the bureau. And then we have 3 allocated spare vehicles on top of that as well, and then we have some specialty vehicles. I don't have the exact number, but I would bet we're probably somewhere close to the 80 to 85 total vehicles, but again, those aren't patrol cars. Patrol cars that we respond in, you'd have 73. That's the actual number.
So with those 73 vehicles, out of how many are we looking at to replace with this 361,000?
19 are scheduled for replacement.
19 are scheduled, so
But we don't think we need to replace 19. Down the road, like I said, all we're doing would be kicking that down the road an extra year or 2 years, depending on the vehicle.
So
If we're talking about actual patrol vehicles that we're looking to replace, we're probably in the 12 range. That's where the engine would come into play on that.
So because the ER&R, we put money into the fund by vehicle, we track all equipment in ER&R by piece of equipment that we need to replace. The only reason that we would use the money for something else that we're collecting for a specific piece of equipment is if that equipment's going to be surplused. So that money that is sitting in ER&R now for vehicles that eventually need to be replaced should not be used to address this cost. The board would be, we would be asking the board to put new money into the budget for this.
361.
Right.
Okay,
When you,
no, go ahead.
I guess my decision is gonna be based more on the $80,000 amount, you know, on the performance of the vehicle and the maintenance of that particular vehicle, what you might end up saving by having a vehicle that holds up better. So the 80,000 is kind of the main, we're stuck with the other, it sounds like, no matter what. And it seems to me that 80,000 for a more dependable fleet and for the potential of retaining or recruiting, and are you still doing lateral recruits? If we were to retain one individual, and hence we would not have to hire a new recruit and train that recruit and bring them up to speed, just one person in that category, one FT in that category, basically would save us money in the long run. So to me, it is about this whole retention and recruitment and maintenance. It's a very small price to pay to make it all work. And because we're stuck with the majority anyway, we have no choice on some of it. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. Yeah, we could put two-cycle motor or two cylinders in or something like that, but it just doesn't work out in reality. So the difference is a small amount if we only hang on to one person and save X number of dollars because of maintenance issues.
I believe it's about $215,000 to send a deputy through the first year of training, equipment, all that kind of stuff. So when we replace those individuals.
That's kind of where I'm at on this whole thing.
The only comment I'll make on that is that I spend a lot of time out on patrol still and chat with our deputies and the comments made oftentimes, we have a few deputies who have, we've already started this purchase of the slower vehicles. And they've started to make their way out into patrol. And the comments that have been made back and forth to me is that the deputies would rather stay in their old EcoBoost Explorers that have 140,000 miles on them and not have a new car. That's kind of the mentality that I'm getting. So it kind of gives you a little bit of perspective as to what is going to keep people around. And it's historically that the sheriff's office has had great equipment. You guys have all done a very good job of getting us fantastic equipment. We have great radios. We're in the process of doing the RMS, JMS report writing stuff. Like, it's all fantastic, and we're just trying to keep that level of good equipment up.
Additional questions for the sheriff?
So you will see this conversation during your deliberations on the budget amendment that is coming up in June, I believe. Yeah.
That's when the budget amendment is due.
So, well, I assume the sheriff's office will submit a budget amendment request, and that will serve you as part of the background information when you deliberate this item.
And normally I would say that that's exactly the right time, but I believe that there's a urgency in ordering the cars, and I'm gonna turn to Bruce.
If there is enough budget authority.
I know, I mean, that's normally I would say, so I will bring more information, perhaps not today, about what the need is in the placing the order.
So more to come.
Okay.
Yeah, more to come.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you
So much.
Thank you.
Do you
Appreciate
want
your
any of
time.
these memos or documents about?
Yeah, if we can get all copies of it, I think it's just good for all of us to have.
You can just take them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, board.
Okay. Next is bonus to county employees.
Yes, and let me take you back to just last fall, where the board made some decisions that in fact you wanted to have the desire to have a bonus to county employees. There is some money set aside on the budget as you made those decisions on the budget. And one of the conversations you may recall that you wanted to perhaps at that point align with the current contracts that we have, where you will address the bonus on individuals covered by a contract and employees covered by a contract and employees that are not covered by a contract. So I don't want to get too much into the details of the contract negotiations, but at this point, we're going through mediation. And that mediation is going to take time to get through those contracts. So the conversation today is what will be the desire of the board for considering the bonuses for the non-represented employees. Only the contracts may have different terms and conditions related to this particular item. So we're going to be presented to you. Nicole is going to navigate through a couple of options. And at a high level, there's going to be two elements, just give you the two main elements of this particular option that you have. Is, as you may recall, it was the last revenue that we utilized and when we moved from the ARPA funds into the general fund, that money was set aside to cover this potential bonus to county employees. If the board is willing to utilize just that piece of the revenue, the last revenue as part of the general fund, and cover this potential bonus, the maximum that you could consider will be $1,250 at one time. But if the board has any other options, then perhaps you may distribute the bonus among the different funds that would be public health, public works, so you distribute those bonuses utilizing the other funds. Your capacity at that point, your limit will be $2,000 bonus. So those are the two options we're going to be presented to you. And again, utilizing only the last revenue as part of the ARPA funds has a maximum of $1,250. If the board exercise to go through and distribute through the other funds outside of the general fund, and again, like road fund, public health, and all that, the maximum that you may have as an option is $2,000 one time. Within the whole process, you will see that if you provide the direction to just go with one way or the other to non-represented employees, we will save enough money to make sure that we cover any type of bonuses that might be negotiated as part of the contracts. In this proposal, there is a couple of exemptions. On this proposal, we will not be including the sheriff deputies nor the corrections because those contracts were already negotiated. As you may recall, the sheriff deputies already included in their contracts got one-time bonus. So they will not be having two bonuses. In the corrections, they choose not to go with a bonus. They include a little bit higher cost of living increase. So the proposals before you will be excluding those two elements because the contracts have been already negotiated. And also as part of the conversation, and I believe that's what you suggested at that time, is that elected officials will not be part of the bonus as well. With that, any questions before Michelle gets you into a little more detail?
Nope, go. Oh, Commissioner, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
You kind of put a cap on $1,250 or $2,000. I didn't get that exactly. What is the criteria that's driving that?
So remember the last revenue that we utilized from ARPA funds, we moved that into the general fund. And we put that set aside in the general fund for you to exercise this particular action. So if you were to use only the general fund to issue the bonus to all county employees except for the sheriff deputies and corrections, your capacity of that is $1,250. But if you'd like to exercise and said, okay, use the sum of that money in addition to distribute the additional bonus to the road fund, the public health fund, because there's a lot of employees that are part of the other funds, then your capacity will be to 2,000.
I guess I still don't get that, but.
Okay.
If I may.
Yeah.
So on the screen here is the ARPA expenditures by category.
Have we got a handout on this or no?
No, I do not have a handout on this, but this was the ARPA report that was presented in March 3rd.
Okay.
To the public. And on row 6, the revenue replacement, 6.1.B is the line that we're talking about, and that is the employee retention bonus. During the midterm budget decisions, $1.5 million was set aside for this discussion that we're having today. And so, if I may, Romero, speaking about a cap of about $1,250 to $2,000, it has to do with living within that amount that we put away during the midterm.
And then, okay, the 2,000, I guess, I'm just
So
trying to see the difference.
between the 1,200 and 2,000 is if you decide to go the delta between the 1,250 and the 2,000, distributed on all the employees that are not part of the general fund.
Or employees that like Public Works, for example, like, you know, go.
Don't we want to treat everybody?
You will achieve, everybody will be treated the same, we just distribute it
Through the other funds.
through the other funds, except for the Lake Management District, to be clear. Those will not be part of this. I just want to be clear on that one.
So taking the 1.5, just the ARPA only, you keep saying the non-represented employees. How many are those?
So I have this sheet up here now, and this is a workbook that I put together that calculates that information that you're asking for. So the non-represented employees, these are our regular non-represented employees. So based on what Romero has spoken about, that excludes any elected officials from this conversation who would be approved for a budget, for an increase, as well as deputies, the captains, and the corrections. Again, because negotiations increased, they got a budget, a bonus, or they got increases. So the total non-represented employees would be 365.8. This is FTE, so we have part-time individuals. And so this spreadsheet here allows us to look at the numbers in which Romero is speaking to. So I've worked with Romero, we've looked at some of these numbers. If we, during the budget development midterm, we had put around $1,000 as a bonus amount. But if we were to look at the numbers now with more detailed information about our FTE count, and we were to say that the bonus amount is $1,250, then this calculation tells us regular employees that amount would be $1.5 million. We could break it out by fund, saying the general fund would be about $696,000, and then our other funds would be about $832. And what you see here, very small, is just a breakout of every fund below if you wanted to know which funds would be impacted by that dollar amount. So Romero is speaking about the non-represented employees. So that is a subset of what's going on the left side of the sheet. So that's a total of 365.8 FTE, of which 212.7 is general fund and 153 is other funds. And here you can see that amount. So the total amount is $530,000 there. Can you see that, Romero? Do you mind? Thank you. And then we have the general fund would be up 309,000, and the others would be 221 or 222. So what this is saying is that if we were to give a bonus of $1,250 to the employees, and we decided to cover every fund, every employee that's affected by every fund with lost revenue, that would be $1.5 million. Now, we earmarked about that amount during the midterm. So if you wanted to say give more than that, and this is Romero saying to a max of 2,000, then that's 2.5, and that's well over our earmarked amount that we put away during the midterm. But we could opt to just do general fund. If we opt just to do general fund, that's 1.1, and then you're within your 1.5 that you put aside during the midterm.
To clarify, we're not suggesting we would give the bonus to only general fund paid employees. What we're suggesting is, should the board choose this option, we pay for the bonus for employees normally paid out of general fund with the ARPA lost revenue. And then all other funds would bear the cost for the employees paid out of those funds for the bonus. So all employees, with the exceptions that Romero noted, would get the same bonus, just not all paid for by ARPA lost revenue.
But we did put that money into the general fund already, right?
No.
No, we did not.
It's sitting in the ARPA fund, waiting
That's why
for
you're
the board
differentiating
to.
between the two?
I'm sorry,
Is
what?
that why you're differentiating between general fund and ARPA funds?
No, the only reason we're doing a differentiation is you can afford a higher bonus if,
If you distribute it among
yeah,
all the
if you decide, it's all up to you. I mean, you can decide this any way you wish. But the money available in ARPA lost revenue, could you scroll down? Because this is how much we had in lost revenue. There's $10 million available to the board. We're using 7 million of that in the general fund just to sustain the general fund balance. Then we set aside this 1.5 million for the employee retention bonus. We've also already paid the sheriff's office retention bonus to the extent that we could, 142,000. And we're using $500,000 out of the lost revenue for the Tenino Ag Park. Those are the things that the board has already dedicated, if you will. And then you see the 821,000 that we've been talking about so far using for Mottman. That is the full accounting of the 10 million in ARPA lost revenue. Now, what we're suggesting, or rather what we're asking the board, is how would you like to spend the 1.5 million that you set aside for the bonus? Do you wanna give everybody a bonus paid out of ARPA lost revenue? If so, you can afford a bonus of $1,250 per employee. Or you could opt for a higher bonus up to $2,000 per employee, paid for out of lost revenue, covering only those employees who are normally paid out of the general fund, and you could have every other fund that normally pays for employees pay their share of the bonuses. So, or something in between.
Something in between.
Anywhere in between.
What we give you today is just the capacity, the maximum capacity,
This
obviously.
is where you have room.
Can I take this back a step? Our original thought, tell me if I've got this right. Our original thought was to align this with contract negotiations so that we could maybe give everyone the same or some permutation of a unified scheme. And that's not really possible because we're in mediation and these contractual negotiations have gone on longer than we expected, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And getting through the mediation process is gonna take us months. And so that's the reason as to why we bring this matter to your attention.
So, okay, so that's important to me, because I mean, I'm fine with what you guys are talking about. To me, it's about all the employees and how this is, are we doing the right thing in terms of timing and treating the represented and non-represented in the way that is fair and equitable or whatever. So when you say months, like the fall, or how long could this process take?
It's unknown. We have been assigned a mediator, and So we are looking.
Can you introduce yourself just for?
And so we're looking to schedule first mediation sometime in April. But it's not a guarantee like one and done, right? It could have multiple iterations, and we have multiple other collective bargaining where we haven't come to impasse, but might possibly do. So there's others. Right now we're at impasse with AFSCME, so the general courthouse, district court, juvenile detention, court security, and did I say district court? Okay, so so the likelihood of settling anything, it's unknown to me, but I wouldn't anticipate it's gonna be done in April.
And we certainly don't have to pay the bonus now to any of our employees. We can continue to wait to see what the union settle.
It's just a point, if I may, a point of clarification. If the board decides to go with to pay the bonus for the non-represented employees, this action, you will not use all the capacity because we have to leave money set aside when the contract negotiations will be completed. So the proposal here is not that we're using all the capacity for non-represented employees. It's just the model includes all the employees and you just use a portion of it. And you leave enough capacity to do whatever that is. The risk is if you go with this proposal, whether it's $1,250 or $2,000, the risk is perhaps the contracts may be negotiated with a higher bonus. And that will be another point of discussion for the board if you'd like to go back retroactively to make the same to all the rest non-represented. But that's a little more.
We're also showing you the maximum that the ARPA lost revenue can bear. So should the unions settle for something higher in their bargaining agreements, then we have to have a discussion about how do we pay for that higher amount.
Can I ask Maria's expert opinion? I mean,
We generally only talk about the negotiations in an executive session.
not about the negotiations.
Okay.
My question is gonna be, do you believe that, let's say $1,250 to the, I mean, is that gonna is that gonna be important toward recruitment and retention of our employees? I mean, is that gonna be perceived as?
Well, recruitment, we're not offering it to new candidates to retain.
It's to retain.
You know, that's a difficult question to ask because part of the retention bonus isn't tied, well, you have to stay here another 6 months or another year. So conceivably, someone could get it, let's say, May 1st and take another job.
But it will help.
Certainly it helps.
I guess I just mean, is it, not is it actually gonna effectively, retain, but is it gonna be perceived by employees as a benefit that they would appreciate, that would be meaningful? I don't know what I'm trying to ask. I guess,
They don't want a pizza party, that's for sure.
are you aware of like other, I mean, are you in touch with other counties? I mean, how would this fit? Like, I don't have a good sense of, is this,
So the state did a bonus and I recall if it was around.
Don't remember.
1,500.
It was 1,500. It's Snohomish County did that, Kitsap County.
So it's
this ballpark.
varied.
Yeah, this that ballpark, and that's what staff is bringing you some options, the maximum and the two different models as to how you can utilize this. Purely ARPA fund, revenue loss, or a combination. And when you use the combination, you have the option of a higher bonus. By the way, I'm not expecting you to say yes today. We'll bring this in a couple of weeks if that's your desire. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer along the way.
I'm curious, how come we didn't, get a couple pieces of paper with this to kind of take a look at? I mean, is there a reason that we don't want that out, or?
No, this is to the public.
Yeah,
Everything is
I
broadcast to
know,
the public, sir.
But I mean, it's just,
The only reason you don't have a piece of paper is Nicole was perfecting the model
up until the last
yesterday.
second or something.
Yes.
And she was prepared
Happy
to
to
give you
print
the
it out
different
for-
options. She changed on the fly, 1,200, but we'll give you a printout of the 1,200 and we'll give you a printout of the 2,000, 1,250 and the
But I mean,
2,000.
of this material that, it deducts from this amount and all that. I'm curious, out of that 7 million, that's committed, is it spent or just committed?
It's part of your,
It's part of the forecast. It's been part of the forecast for the last 2 years.
So some of it's there, some of it's not, but we're
We have
depending on it being there.
transferred, we've transferred in about 4 million, and what we're doing is now, we'll transfer in 1.5 this year, and then I think it's 1.5 next year. So, but I spread it out over the years to sustain the fund balance to be able to do things that you've already committed to.
But sometimes we make commitments and, there's something left. And,
No, it's sunk.
there's no such thing as something left on this one? That, I don't know, I mean, I'm glad you're not asking for a decision right now, but I have to say, I like to. And why can't we have an executive session and talk about, negotiation issues in conjunction with this? Because
Certainly can.
it is really part of the deal. I mean, we're trying to retain folks and get new folks and
you can certainly
justify
request an
that.
executive session, sir.
I'm not in favor of executive sessions as a general rule, but I want to use the rules when we can to at least have a conversation amongst ourselves about,
So,
yes.
yeah, I guess I'll lay out where, because I think I've been the one who's been asking Ramiro about this, and I've been tracking kind of how the union negotiations are going. And when I heard, right, that it's gonna take more time, I was concerned from the employee perspective because we were only able to give a 2.5% salary increase this year with the thought process, right, that we were gonna be able to give out this bonus, and that bonus kept getting pushed back. And if we keep pushing it back, we're really doing nothing for retention, and I think it's a huge morale booster. It shows employees that we appreciate them. I'm honestly, like, I'll just be really honest, I'm on the top of the scale for where I'm at, right? And
When you say that, 2 million, or
the
2,000.
2,000, just because I've heard pretty loud and clear from employees, right, on it, and just with inflation rates, and I understand that negotiations are still ongoing, and I don't know how those are gonna come out, but I just thought it was important that we have a conversation on, how long are we willing to really delay this? And so, kind of,
Maybe considering Commissioner Messer is going to be out of the office and myself out of the office next week, I can probably bring on April 11th in 2 weeks. And under an executive session, Board Maria will give you really a good perspective as to where we are in the different negotiations.
I'd like to know how this decision, an expert opinion from our bargaining about how that would affect those negotiations.
That may
Making
be,
this early decision at a high level, at a lower level, what's the expert?
that will be a great questions to ask in the executive
And I
session.
have a follow-up to that. I'm kind of curious, if we did 1250, does that change the situation to 3.5% is what they ended up with, or?
Well,
you know, 3
that will be in a
3/4?
strategy that you absolutely need to discuss that in an executive session.
Well, then I think that's all the more reason maybe to have that session.
Okay, so you will see an executive session on April 11th. Thank you. The next item, if I may, Madam Chair, should take briefly less than 3 minutes. That's the Salary Commission.
Okay.
The Salary Commission, as you know, is currently we have 5 members. They are going to come into a term, and their term is the end of March. So out of the 5 members, only one is already really termed out. Under current statute, they can only serve 2 consecutive terms. So it's only one who has reached that 2 consecutive terms, and the other 4 have the option to have an additional term. The staff has reached out to each one of them to see if they're interested on a reappointment for the next term, the 4. And also, staff has reached out to the outgoing member, which is the with a professional business background, key in an HR, to see if he or she has any option as to who can probably take his or her place. I think it's his place. So that's the status. We're working on that. You probably may see some applications for reappointments or appointments. And again, there's 5 members of the Salary Commission. They're coming either to one term, and again, it's the only one who has termed out of 2 terms, but more to come on that. Any questions?
Are there only 5 on that commission?
No, it's more than that.
thought it
It's
was-
close to 10, I believe,
Yeah,
7.
10.
Yeah.
And then I thought the auditor selected from some kind of voter roll. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think it's.
So do we normally solicit for a particular, do you know somebody you'd like to have on there?
There is
That's a
some,
question that sounds foreign to me.
some selected by the lottery by the others, and some are specifically appointed by the board.
Because I thought we
It's a
didn't
combination.
really even know who they were in most cases.
I can answer that. The way statute is written, there are 2 members for each county commissioner that are selected by lot, which are, I believe, the ones that are expiring. However, there are 4 that are in various professions like labor, personnel, management, and that's one of these positions. Legal, I believe, is another one. So the position that Romero was referencing is one of the board-appointed positions, correct?
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean,
So more to come, and the objective is, if we get to reappointments or appointments, then will continue to be the objective to Salary Commission to meet this year to make an assessment of last year's adjustment.
what
of-
about the 5 commissioner business and 2 per
Yeah,
commission?
thank you. The pieces of legislation passed the House, has passed the Senate, most likely is gonna be signed by the governor. I don't see any reason why not. And through that process, we just had a conversation, we need to have an internal process. Hopefully they will bring this back to you in the fall to set the stage of the 5 commissioners related to the planning commission, to the salary commission. So it's coming.
Yes, so these 4 that are, 5, but 4 of them could be reappointed, and they haven't told us if they want to be or not.
I have not received one, yeah.
Isn't there something, Mary, that we have like a time limit to reappoint? Does that apply to all of the seats or just the ones that are?
No, all the seats, 30 days from the time of a vacancy occurs. So,
In
We don't
order,
technically have vacancies yet, but they're right around the corner.
the end of the month,
this week.
The end of this month.
the end of this month.
So thank you for that clarification.
That's
So,
Friday.
so if we don't see, if we don't receive any letters for reappointment, then the county auditor will have to go through the process
And we have our list ready to go already,
So-
so we're prepared to do that.
so that,
Okay, good. And then the 4 that are like issue specific, I know we just seated a legal person, so that person's gotta be fine. The other 3 are filled.
I believe there's only one vacancy, which is the one that's expiring, which is the
Two
human.
terms, the human resources
Yeah, they're
specialist.
termed out.
Okay. But that won't, I mean, they can still make quorum without that seat filled potentially.
Yes.
And they haven't met, like, they didn't meet last year. So is the plan to get them to meet?
They couldn't come up with, they couldn't have a quorum, they couldn't get to a quorum, so therefore a meeting never took place.
Right.
So,
We talked at the end of last year, right, when we were seating the legal person that the last person to be found and seated. We were talking about having them meet early this year and to maybe sort of almost like a retroactive or however that works, like decision making, kind of making up for last year.
right.
And now we're at the point where before that's even happened, we're about to lose four or five more people.
So they created yet another wrinkle, yeah.
Just I mean, chasing our tail, and I'm just wondering if we can get them to meet the first half of this year, not next December.
That's outside
That
of
would mean
my
we lost a
area,
whole 2
so
years, yeah.
Yes.
I do what you're hurting.
Yeah, good points. I think the letter of appointment, if they choose to be reappointed or new appointments, you may consider having a specific language as to the requirements for them to meet, if they accept this appointment. I mean, that's just a simple expectation. That's all I have for you.
Okay, it's 12:06 and we're behind schedule.
Let's do.
Yeah, on 12:30, I got it.
Yeah, so the next executive sessions, one is scheduled for 20 minutes, maybe it wouldn't take that long, and the other one is for 15 minutes. I don't think it will take that long either. We have members for both executive sessions, county auditor, county treasurers for the first one. You'll have the county assessor and the county prosecutor for number two, yeah. So you can flip-flop the two, but how you want it. Is Brandon coming, Maria?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Which one you would like to go first? You
So-
can change the order.
We start with the rental assistance first, just how it's laid out.
It's up to you guys, and I don't want you to stop because it's fine to proceed if I have to leave, but I don't want to hold it up. So that you guys before 1.
Okay, so we'll start with the rental assistance. Okay, so we're heading into executive session per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
hold
John
on.
now, I mean, John can stay. Yep.
To discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or member acting in the capacity is or is likely to become a party. And this is in regards to rental assistance. Then we will be heading also into executive session for RCW 42.30.110 subsection I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency, litigation, or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party, and this is in regards to the assessor's office. We'll go ahead and get started with 30 minutes for executive session, and from there, we'll go. We are back from executive session. It is 12:48 PM. We were in executive session for two matters. The first one, RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I, to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party. First item was in regards to rental assistance. The second item was in regards to assessor's office. No commissioners' actions follow, and it is 12:48, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
See you too.
Yep.